This is What We Wore, and I'm Laura Vinroot Poole.
So we're at this moment of looking back, and I'm wondering what this body of work means to you.
I think it's a time capsule. It is fashion, but it is just the past 6 years, and it's a moment in time, and to have this record of how we lived and how we got there and all of that. I'm really proud of that. Maybe it's the Southern in me sharing stories because you learn from them, because, and it normalizes you. Because I think that, growing up, I do think I did feel really isolated. Like, this was a small town in North Carolina, and I had really big dreams. The more stories I heard about people all over the world making things and doing things, the more I thought I could maybe do that, and I could share that, and I also that I could make my community better. I could create whatever I wanted. So I got together with you and said, I think we should do a podcast with designers, because the only thing you get is this filter through fashion magazines at the time, and they were all kind of like, what was your inspiration? Like things that I just didn't find that interesting. And that's just me. Again, I'm not really a fashion maven. I'm more about people and helping people to move about their lives more beautifully, but also more confidently. So I think to be able to ask designers, why did you get into the business? Like, what are you actually doing? I really wanted that opportunity. And also, we've always hosted designers. We've always had events and dinners, because for me, it was always about sharing and, saying, hey, Lisa, I want you to meet this incredible designer, artist, really. He makes beautiful work. I think you'd love it. It was never kind of like, fashion was always about, in my experience, was always like, don't you know this designer? Like, like, don't you know his new work? And I was like, no, like, I wanted it to be way more inclusive. So I thought the podcast could be a good way to do that, because we would have these dinners and people would just be like clamoring to come to the dinner so they could sit with the artist and hear about how they got into the business, what their trajectory was. It is mostly people I'm really interested in understanding their story and how they got where they are. People like Chloe Mall, I think that's really interesting, or Lauren Sherman. Things that like fashion nerds really like, like people that are really into the workings of business of fashion. But to see their trajectory from, what they're, Chloe just got named editor-in-chief of Vogue, and Lauren at Puck. Like, I think that's really interesting, and I'm really proud of that. Or people like Mickey Drexler, Mary Catronzou. Like, I don't know. I think I've been in the business so long that I've known many iterations of all of these people. And one of the more interesting ones for me, too, is Jeffrey Kalinsky. Jeffrey was always really the prince of of fashion. And so he, from the very beginning, he was so good to me when I first started. He really was so kind to me. And and I think there's a little of that sort of southernness that we would see each other at fashion shows. And there's a lot of dumb stuff that goes on. And so to see him and be like, hey, what are you doing? And he was like, hey, it was sort of just normal. It normalized being in Paris in January at a couture show that I felt like I could see somebody from home. Jeffrey's store was bought by Nordstrom, and then he became, I think, the creative director of Nordstrom. And then I think during the pandemic, moved on and retired. And now, in the last several weeks, he's announced that he's opening a store in Atlanta, and it's so exciting. And he shared on the podcast a lot about how much he missed it, how much he loved it. Like, even I think somebody like Tommy Tan, who, oh my God, like, I've known Tommy for so long, and same kind of thing. Like, we'd see each other at Fashion Week, and he was just like a normal person. And he's come to Charlotte a couple times to events. We brought him to NASCAR. It was like almost our podcast was sort of this renaissance of him too. Like, afterwards there were several more podcasts, and he's writing a book, and I don't know, just to sort of appreciate these people that made and make the industry and make it interesting.
So let's say we stopped recording after 10 years. What would you hope the listeners would have gotten out of the podcast?
I mean, last man standing. Because actually, I think that's one of the, everybody has a podcast now. Everybody has a jewelry line. What's hard is actually sticking to it and being consistent and creating a body of work. I think that's actually hard. And I think that about being in business 28 years. I think like this is so not a hobby. Everybody can't do it this long because it's not that fun all the time. I'm on the road 6 months out of the year, 5 months out of the year, I think, if you looked at it solidly. And my mom would always say, like, why do you have to travel that much? Why do you have to do it? And it's because this is the store that we've committed to being and to doing and to delivering. And we could do it differently, but it would be a different store. And so I think that, like, if you're committing to creating a store like this, then that's the requirement of it. You have to travel that much because you have to see this many collections. And so with the podcast too, I mean, I think that is actually the commitment to the clients and to the greater good. Like, that is our commitment. We want to share stories. We want to share beauty. We want a well-informed client. You know, we want people to know what they're buying and who made it for them. I think that's who I am. I think I am not a gatekeeper. I really do believe in sharing and sharing information and all those things. Like that's actually the commitment. Thank you for being part of the What We Wore community. Please be sure to follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at What We Wore Podcast.